Dave?
Yeah, a couple things that I want to point out that I think we kind of missed is on the current costs. There's a lot of litigation and shortages of Ordinance 2 fees in there that I think are exponentially moving out the deficits out that are not going to be long-term costs that the water district is going to see. So we're seeing those carried out. And I've talked to a couple board members about potentially looking at a rate structure, adding in a surcharge for litigation and a surcharge for Ordinance 2 fees. So in an annual year, if you have a shortage of Ordinance 2 fees, so this year I don't know what it's going to come in at with the new proposed transfer. I think you're probably $250,000, maybe less than that, shortage this year in the budget because of Ordinance 2 fee shortages. And then you've got $500,000 worth of litigation. And I'd like to see that brought out as a surcharge line item. So as we go forward, that can be lined out on a quarterly basis or something like that to the actual bills instead of building it in to a progression out there that isn't going to be maintained. The other thing is your structures appear to be only on an ERU of a 1 ERU. So now you got commercial that's got much bigger. So I mean, there's no way that these conservation blocks apply to somebody that's got a 4 or an 8 ERU tap on the system. So I think you really need to look at the ERU that on the impact fees. I mean, I've got a 4 ERU on my commercial, and I paid a substantial impact fee for that, and now we're going to be in without without any problem be peak that out in a heartbeat on the commercial. So I really think that the structure needs to be looking at the ERU of the site also for that block levels. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Dave. I like the line item. I just don't know how to do it. I mean,
one of the things we did is we looked at as Dave has mentioned, breaking it into different user classifications: 4-inch meters, 6-inch meters, 8-inch meters. That's something we've talked about before, but is not something we've taken action on. We looked at our largest users, and most of their use, typically with those larger connections, are already in that biggest tier. Our largest user saw a net increase of $282 a year because most of their usage is already in that higher tier. And their monthly water bill was over $13,000. As we look at individual cases, though, that may be magnified. We didn't look at each individual case, but typically, Davis hit a good point. If you only extrapolate it based on the 1-inch and residential connections, and those tiers, it does end up swinging to where business can end up paying a disproportionate share. To counter that, though, we looked at one of the largest meters, the 12-inch meter, and they were one of our smaller users. The 6-inch meter that I cited had probably double or, well, quadruple the usage that the 12-inch meter actually had. And so there is some discrepancy in usage patterns, and when they need it, they need that much water. But there's months of periods of time, so it's hard to actually pin that in, and that's something that definitely can be refined. But we were trying to be sensitive to that as well, although we haven't talked about breaking these up not only into separate tiers, but actually separate ERU class structure or user class structures as well.
And I think the other issue that they brought up, as you look at the chart that Aaron put together, Southern Nevada, the people that they deliver water to, they add a fee, actually several different fees on there. There's a commodity charge, an infrastructure charge, and a reliability surcharge on the other water districts' bills. And those types of things like Dave was talking about, something like that we can take a look at also as we move forward.
That infrastructure charge, I think, is directly tied to the third intake that they're going to lake meet type thing. And also, when I was putting this together, again, this is for a 3/4 inch meter. You look at a lot of these entities, they do have a different structure for, they'll group, half or 3/4 inch, 1 inch into a certain tier structure, and they can go up to a 2-inch, 3-inch, group those together in actually have different tiers set up, kind of like I think what Dave was alluding to, all the way up to the top. And it was quite interesting how and telling that was. It was very.
It's critical because of the district's past criminal problems. I mean, we don't have a bond rating. We couldn't borrow a nickel tomorrow if we had to, and we lost huge amounts of money that we're paying for. So we've got to figure out something here to get going on this, and it's critical. I mean, if it's costing us more money to service an account than we're taking in. So.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that businesses shouldn't pay more. No, I don't want to say that. But when you do economic development, people come in, they look at your water rates and things like that. We have to be competitive to the other areas and not put it on the back of the commercial. I mean, we've already got the problems with you have no jurisdiction over the power rates. The power rates are just exponentially tilted toward business, and it just adds a lot of complication to those areas. So I just wonder if we can make some consideration on the size of the ERU, because most are, even a 1-inch meter is, I mean, I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a 1-inch pipe is a 2 ERU on it, because I think it goes up to 5/8 and 3/4 is a 1, and then a 1-inch is a 2 ERU unit. So some residential's homes. Some residentials will have a 2 ERU as it is, so.
They got a swimming pool. Okay, is there any other public comment? Oh, I'm sorry, I can't.
Well, a couple of things that just jumped out at me, and one was that we need to build capacity. I heard that we don't have adequate capacity. That just strikes me as how that doesn't seem to match up my mind with the fact that the growth for the last 3 or 4 years has been lower than we expected it to be and projected it to be. So we didn't grow as much, yet we still need more capacity. Those two things, that was our past planning so poor that we deferred all issues of capacity. We've just been barely struggling by. So that's something I'd like to explore a little more.
Yeah, and that's going to be part of this process as we move forward, John.
And the other thing that's jumped out at me is that, projected revenue requirement, that's cost, right? That's how much money it takes. And it goes up significantly, a lot more than projected usage or water usage or growth. Again, in order for us common folks to figure that out, is how come that goes up. I know we're putting capital projects in. Again, I would like to see, well, okay, how come we're so far behind in our capital projects? What was our poor planning? What was the cause of it? We've been doing, quote, deferred maintenance for a decade, because it jumps out that, in today's environment, there's, we have to cut costs, except we're increasing our costs over $1 million a year on very small projected increases of usage. And I'm not saying it's not right, I'm just saying, again, I would really need to say, okay, what are those things that we need, and who made the decisions to defer those costs in the past, and how are we going to keep from making those same bad decisions in the future?
Message received, thank you.
Yeah,